out of the norm of what you do. And sometimes you can be highly successful with bluebirds, right? Many of you know as small business owners, I know I have, if I didn't take jobs that were adjacent to what my core competency was, you just never grow your business, right? Because and bluebirds that I've tracked have ended up being business lines for me. So sometimes they're highly successful, but sometimes you are clearly a duck out of water. And if you still bid on that and you lose, like somebody's got to be the voice of reason. So you want to make sure that you have reviewers that are looking at this. Now, that decision should have been made at the bid decision point, because you wasted all this time now to go after it. You probably should still commit. But you want to make sure people have an overall understanding of how this piece of business fits in your overall portfolio. Some should be outsiders from the proposal team so that they can catch errors that the proposal team doesn't see. You all know yourselves. If you're working on a report and you've been working on it for a couple of weeks and you keep writing it, and then all of a sudden, like, you don't see errors anymore, right? Just like when I look up here and I've been typing these slides, and it's not until today that I see that it should have said pre-award survey instead of re-award survey, right? When you come back and look at it, after a period of time, you see those errors. That's the same thing that your review team should be doing, because the proposal team just doesn't see errors anymore. And then you want to make sure this is representing your company in the best possible light. I've evaluated proposals, and I will tell you, and it's my own bias, and I can't say for sure that contracting officers think like this, but if you can't spell words correctly in a proposal, what makes me have faith that you're going to be able to do my work correctly? You know, and so just kind of keep in mind that you're presenting your own company, and you want to present it in the best possible way. So what you want to do for review is to give the storyboard and the compliance matrix for each section, along with the RFP and the actual proposal section, so that the review team members are actually just like your selection of the government. You ask the reviewers to focus on content and compliance. And then you ask, if you were the customer, would you buy from me? And if the answer is no, why wouldn't you buy from me? Well, you're not really clear about what you're providing here. Oh, your price seems too high over here. Whatever the issues are, let them tell you that, because those are the kind of things, if they jumped out at them, they're going to jump out at your evaluation team. You also want, now typically we used to have review teams where everybody would get together in one room. That's usually cost prohibitive these days. So typically what happens is we say, you know, Wednesday is going to be the review day. Everybody get on the phone at 8 o'clock. You give them instructions. You send out all their sections, and you give them until the end of the day to get comments back to you. Because your proposal team is on a fast pace to get this done, so you've got to get comments back. Make sure you tell them to use the revisions feature on Microsoft Word, or to give you like general comments at the end if it pertains to the whole thing. Basically what you want to do is be able to consolidate quickly and get them out to the proposal writers. And then obviously a prompt turnaround. So the PIM team is the opportunity for the marketing and sales team to ensure that what they know in their heads about the customer gets into this proposal. Remember the diagram we talked about where we said, who knows the most about the customer? That's the sales team. How much do they write? Very low. Who writes the most? The proposal writers. What do they know about the customers? Very low. See the problem? So the idea of the marketing review is to get what the sales and marketing team knows about the customer infused into the proposal. So that's what we want to make sure all those win themes and strategies are in there. They're looking at win themes to ensure that they're mentioned and supporting the proposal. So remember I talked about those pop-out boxes. If you say you're the Premier Systems Integrator and there's nothing in the document that supports why you're a Premier Systems Integrator, it's useless. So you always want to give the supporting evidence for why you're making these claims. The proposal, the sales and marketing team are also thinking in their heads, how does this tie to what the potential competitors' proposals are going to look like? So not only do they need, the marketing and sales team need to know about what you're doing internally, they should be thinking about what your competitors are doing. And then they're determining whether the customer will feel the company understands them. So the whole thing about a proposal, just like you as business owners, when you get proposals from vendors, what you're looking for is not only are they technically compliant, but do they get me? Do they understand me? Do they understand how I run business? Or are they coming up with a plan that's so far out of reach that we would never be able to work together? So you always want to make sure that the proposal that you're submitting to the government comes across the same way. Any questions about the pink key? The technical review, blue team, basically they're checking to see if the technical solution will work as intended, if it's written about in a clear and compelling manner. In other words, have you answered the so what question? Why should the government pick you versus somebody else? Did I tell you my sob story? Okay, here's my sob story. So, you know how car dealers always get a bad rap for, they take advantage of you and they're slimy and squeezy and all that kind of stuff. So when I was buying my first car, I knew that, and I decided that I was going to come up with my own strategy for dealing with it. So my strategy was, I'm going to come up with an Excel spreadsheet of all the things that I care about in a car. And I'm going to walk in and I'm going to ask salespeople to tell me about their cars with regard to the things that I care about. So I thought this was a very straightforward, and I was going to take their brochure, thank them very much, and leave. And then in the privacy of my own home, I was going to go through all my spreadsheet responses and the brochure and figure out which car I really liked, not to be pressured by somebody else saying, no, this is the car for you, right? And then I was going to make the decision about which car I wanted, and then I was going to go in and negotiate for it. So that was my strategy. So I went into the car dealers, and the process worked sometimes, just the way I had intended. Most times it didn't, because the salesperson wanted to tell me about what they were on script, so they had things that they wanted to tell me. And quite frankly, it was a waste of my time, because look, I'm telling you what my requirements are. These are the specific things. You're telling me other information. So those I kind of got annoyed with. I stopped the interview. I just said, can I have your brochure? And went on and I was in about. And then I went into the Saab dealership. And no matter how much I tried to stay on my list, the salesperson kept telling me about the safety of Saabs. On and on about the safety of Saabs. And guess what? I was young and naive, and safety wasn't on my list. I'm not saying it shouldn't have been on my list, I'm just saying it wasn't on my list. So the fact that this guy was wasting his time, wasting my time, I didn't care if he was wasting his own time, he was wasting my time, telling me about the safety features really ticked me off. And I left there without any intention whatsoever of buying a Saab. I came home, I found out that my company had just bought a portion of Saab, and we got a hella discount from Saab, and guess what I became interested in all of a sudden. So I went back and decided that I was going to negotiate with the Saab dealer. I would not have done that had that extraneous piece of information of saying we were going to get a 34% discount on all Saabs, because it was purchased, have happened. Based on the salesman's, purely based on the salesman, I was a non-buyer. I was turned off, I was a non-buyer. Okay, so here's the ironic part of the story. I bought the Saab and got into a car accident 3 weeks later, and thank God the safety. So I was in an intersection, and this truck came barreling down through a red light and just wiped me out, so thank God they hurt. I mean, I felt like I was in a tank. Yeah, I could feel the car spinning around, but I actually did feel like I was in a tank and protected, so I didn't have any problem with it. So, I mean, fortunately, it all worked out well in the end, but the point is, I would not have bought the car based on that. So the government feels very much the same way about all of us when we submit our proposals. We have lovely, glowing things to say about our products and services. And unless they're asking about them, they care about what they've asked for as their requirements. You need to make sure you address their requirements, and you can talk a little bit about your fluff and circumstance around your products, But really, they care about what they're interested in. So my point is, don't be the sob salesman, because if you are, you're going to turn them off and they're not going to, in other words, give them what they're asking for. You can put a little bit of fluff in, because I know we're all prone to do that, but make sure you address them first. The other thing that you want to do is they want to check to see if it'll work as intended, if it's written in a clear and compelling manner, if it's responsive and compliant. So remember we talked about the iceberg and the water line? This is the actual requirement. This is what's above the water line. This is what you see in the RFP document, the requirement. But stuff has pushed up that requirement. And it could have been some need, it could be some regulation, it could be a contractor before you really messed with them and they want to make sure that never happens again. Whatever those things are that pushed up that requirement, you want to know that. Because to be responsive, to be compliant, you have to say, yes, you'll do this requirement. That's compliance. But to be responsive, to help the government feel like you get them, that you understand them, you get me, you have to address this stuff down here. Because that shows you're responsive. So the government cares about both compliance and responsiveness. Make sure that there's not disconnects between the sections. So if you talk about a quality control process in the technical solution, it should be the same quality control process you're talking about in the management solution. If not, the government's going to have a clarification for you. You want to make sure that it sounds like it was written by one person versus a committee. Now, I don't know how much, I know you teach and you probably see this, but when you give a group assignment and students, everybody's writing different parts of it, when you get it back as a professor, it's very clear to see, oh, this part was written by somebody, and this person wrote somebody else. Because they're using all different kinds of ways of describing things. There's not that one voice. And as a vendor submitting a proposal to the government, you want to submit one voice. This is what we, as a company, are going to provide to you. Not, this person who wrote this section is talking about one thing, and this person over here is talking about something totally different in the ways it needs to come across as one person. And finally, the overall proposal needs to represent your company well. And, I always think this is a shame of the education system. It's also a shame in the government contracting space. But if you could see all the papers that get submitted by students, like as a professor, I see them and I can figure out how to grade, rack and stack them and grade them. But as an individual student, all you see is your own paper. And if you have a big ego, you may think everything you do is perfect, so obviously this paper is perfect. And if you have the perspective that we have as instructors, where you're seeing all the papers, you realize that yours is like here, and you have a lot of potential for growth. And it's the same thing with proposals. There are some companies who write their proposals as if, they're the be-all and end-all, and they think, well, the government picked us because we are IBM, or we are whatever, when in reality, they're looking at compliance and they're looking at responsiveness. Would you agree with that? Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, blue team review is the actually this should be green team. I'll change that. The green team review is the management team review. Basically here you're looking at your management solution. So how did you structure your organization for this particular contract? Is it written in a clear and compliant manner? Same kinds of things we're looking at the technical side. You want to make sure there's no disconnects, no inconsistencies between sections. The people that you have in your organization chart, you should have resumes for those people, or explain how they fit into the overall scheme of things. Red team, this is the overall proposal review. It's making sure that you don't have any disconnects between sections, that it addresses all aspects of Section L in the order required. Everything goes together. And then typically you bring a smaller team in to look at your pricing. Quite frankly, because you don't want to share your overhead rates, your G&A rates, how much you're paying for raw materials with a lot of people. So that's why the group who reviews your pricing proposal gets shrunk down. One of the things they're looking for is to make sure all the cells are calculated correctly in Excel. Sometimes the government's templates that they give you to put in your pricing have errors in them, and you want to make sure you correct them, because there can be problems later on. So they're looking at that kind of stuff as well. They want to make sure you're using current rates, because your rates vary over time. They want to make sure that you're using the correct labor categories and the correct prices for those. After the reviews, the proposal leadership team goes through all the changes that were provided by everybody, and they really think about the sensitivity of these overworked proposal team members and what has to be done to make this a better proposal. And they read through all the comments and tell the writers which changes they need to make to their particular sections. But you have to keep in mind that as the proposal goes on, if milestones get missed along the way, the review team gets pushed a couple of days, and all of a sudden, the thing that doesn't change is that government submit date. So you have to figure out what can we reasonably get done in order to make this proposal due date, because that can't change. And then your final proposal tasks, you do the compliance check, you decide on changes like I just mentioned, after review. Now you actually produce, so some agencies are still paper-based, and you have to submit so many copies, and they have to arrive by such and such a date. And if you're going to use FedEx, you always want to make sure that you have enough time allotted to be able to get the stuff in, because if you're, again, you can't be late. If you can submit it electronically, obviously you have a lot more time to submit. Then you deliver it, you disassemble the proposal team, you thank everyone, you're going their merry way, and you wait typically either for an award or for clarifications. Any questions about that? Okay, let's take a short break, and we'll pick back up with the